The vision of the future that we're generally confronted with now is an apocalyptic vision, which is that human industrial activity and population increase is such that we're essentially destroying our ecosystem. We're in a crisis if we don't get our climate emissions, our carbon emissions under control within the next 50 years. We're going to hit a tipping point. The planet is going to spiral into global boiling and everyone's going to die. I don't think there's a shred of evidence for it. 97% of scientists believe that's true is an absolute outright 100% lie. The basic idea is something like this, is that, the human race and all the individuals that make it up have always faced an apocalyptic future. Everybody dies and everyone is going to disappear, and like the catastrophes are coming your way. And obviously societies face apocalyptic circumstances as well. Whole Rome disappeared, Greece disappeared, The apocalypse is always there as a possibility in front of us, always. The fundamental question is, how do you deal with a radically uncertain future? And one answer is, well, you panic and you run around and you terrify everyone and you use that club of fear to beat them into submission and you tyrannize them. Mm-hmm. And you do that while simultaneously claiming that you're saving the planet. And you're not. You're just accruing power to yourself. I think tyrants use fear to obtain compliance. And then you might say, well, what's the alternative to that? Well, the alternative we're trying to put forward is, how about we offer you a good deal? It's like, here's the future you could have. It'll be one where you could get ahead, you could be autonomous, you have your freedom, where your life could be abundant and so could the life of your children. We're pro-family and we're pro-children, and we believe that if human beings acted ethically and communicated forthrightly and aimed upward courageously, because you have to do it courageously given the possibility of the apocalypse, that there isn't a problem that we couldn't solve. We could make the desert bloom. We don't have to enter the future with fear. Apart from the fact that we're mortal and vulnerable, we could develop a vision for the future that was voluntary, positive, concrete, practical, and not naive. We're not going to close our eyes to the fact that the world's a dangerous place, but we're going to say, look, if we got our act together and aimed up, there's no limit to what we could accomplish. There isn't a more valuable natural resource than human cognitive capacity. And there's 8 billion of us, and that means there's 8,000 people out there now who are 1 in a million. Like, if we could capitalize on our collective intelligence, there's no limit to the number of problems we could solve. I don't think there's any reason at all to assume that we couldn't have the abundant future that we would all dream of and maintain harmony with the environment in a manner that we would deem acceptable indefinitely. And I think the best way to interfere with that, both of those, the economic part of it and the environmental part, is to terrify people into tyrannical submission, to demolish the poor, because that will happen immediately afterward, and to have the whole goddamn house of cards come tumbling down. We don't need to do that. Every time you make any basic necessity, and there's no basic necessity more basic than energy, as soon as you make that more expensive, you hurt the poor. There's a small number of people at the top, and they have most of the wealth, and then you go all the way down till the bottom where most of the people are, and they're barely bloody well holding on. And so if you add any more stress to the system, you knock a bunch of them off. They're no longer able to hold to the side of the cliff, and they just fall down. And the Malthusian types will say, well, there's too many people on the planet anyways. And I always read that as saying, well, that means you'll sacrifice the poor to the planet because that's your bloody plan. And I think that is absolutely 100% unconscionable. We should be working to drive energy costs down as low as possible. And I think nuclear is a really good option, but we should be using fossil fuels, especially natural gas, like mad. So while you imagine you're scrabbling around in the damn dirt, like literally trying to worry about where your next meal is going to come from, you're not really very concerned about environmental maintenance. But as soon as you have enough money so that you're not terrorized by poverty, and so that you can start thinking about the future, immediately you start caring about your local environment. It actually means that the fastest way forward to true environmental sustainability is to eradicate absolute poverty. So we could have our cake and eat it too. And that's the sort of thing that I think is an invitation. Is imagine the future is we eradicate poverty and everything's greener. Well, that's a much better deal than degrowth. You don't have heat in your house, you don't get air conditioning, you don't get to fly, you don't get to have a car, you don't get to crack a joke. You're a bloody curse on the surface of the planet. There should be a lot less of you. It's evil to have children. Your ambition is nothing but part of the bloody patriarchal nightmare. It's like, I don't like that vision.